This is Thingspolicesee, first-hand accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. In this interview, I talk with a DC cop who's been on the job under a year. She's already seen some really crazy stuff in her short time there. God only knows the stories she will accumulate from a career in this major city. We also touch on the media a little bit and how their reporting can affect your job as a police officer, especially when you're dealing with the public. And at the end, Caroline has some really great advice for women looking to get into law enforcement and some pointers on the mindset you should have that will really help you out being successful in this career as a female. So I hope you enjoy it. I know I did. It was really fun. Without further ado, here's my interview with my friend Caroline. I'm here with Caroline Miller. I've known Caroline for, how many years, Caroline, would you say? 10, 15 years?
Oh, man, 10 plus.
Yeah, a long time now. It was. I knew you when you were a teenager, maybe like 15, 16 years old. And my wife taught Caroline horseback riding instruction. So I would see you once in a while at the barn, and then a few times I got the duty of towing the horses to a horse show, and Caroline was there. And I remember one time specifically, you guys had me hold the reins of a horse. I thought I was going to die. I was terrified that the horse was going to misbehave. And so from there, we got to know you more. And as you got older, you and Carrie kind of went from a student teacher to friends. You guys became friends, and you down the road, you helped us out with our kids a few times. And I think it was like in your late teens that you knew you wanted to be a police officer. I remember specifically Carrie telling me that, and then you coming to the house to babysit for us, and me saying, "Do you want to be a police officer?" And you were like, "Yep, I do." Specifically,
it was very early on that I knew that I wanted to be a police officer. Like, I don't know why, like, no one in my family wants to be a cop. Like, everyone asks me all the time, like, "Oh, why'd you want to become a cop?" I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, and it was specific. You're like, "I would like to be a detective." And I could tell by the way you said it that you were like dead serious. You had your mindset, and which is really cool and rare. I mean, I went through college, graduated when I was 22. Kind of didn't know. I didn't know. I had an inkling maybe I wanted to do that, but like I went into insurance for a while. Like I didn't know I wanted to be a police officer, but you knew in your late teens, and I thought that was so cool. And then down the road a little further, you got into college and you told us, "Hey, I'm doing an internship with Washington, D.C. Homicide." And when you told me that, I was like, wow, if there was ever a way to see if you really want to join a big city police department, it would be tagging along with Homicide for sure.
Right. And that's still like my end goal. Like, I know I've always told you, like, I want to be a detective, but like after that internship, like it was confirmed. Like that's my end goal, like DC homicide detective for sure. Hands down.
That's awesome. I have a few interviews coming up with some LAPD homicide guys, so I'm sure you'll like those. But that's really cool. You did the internship, and you still wanted to do it after that. And then after that, I was convinced. I'm like, oh, this is for sure what she wants to do. And before I knew it, I'm seeing a Facebook post that you graduated from the police academy. So awesome. My hat's off to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just really, really cool. And I will say that when I was a police officer, you came to my station and interviewed me for a college paper. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but you got a good grade in that class, graduated college, became a police officer.
All because of you, yes.
Big part of it, I'd say. Did you do well in that paper?
Of course.
Yeah, you were a good student. Yeah. All right, that's good to hear. So the DC Police Academy, that is an academy that is it 5 or 6 months? Is that the deal?
I was there just about 6 months, yep.
6 months, okay. Was it sleepover academy?
No, it was non-residential. It was 6 a.m. till 3 p.m, come home.
Thank God.
Go right back, yep.
That was my nightmare when Massachusetts opened this police academy run by the state police, and they were like, well, whichever class opens first, one of them is run by the state police and you sleep there, and the other one's in Plymouth and you can go home. I was like, oh, please, God, don't make
Let it be Plymouth.
Yeah, don't make me sleep in New Braintree with the troopers. It'd be terrible. So I lucked out. All right, Caroline, can you tell us, as a new officer, about the first time you responded to what in the police world they would call a hot call, like a call that got your adrenaline going?
Okay, so this was my very, very first day on the streets, straight out of the academy. And with my FTO, with field training officer, and we got a call for an active shooter at Howard University. So we go, and of course, every single police officer in the city is going. And we've heard reports.
There's a ton of police agencies in D.C., right?
Right. So obviously, D.C. is like the police capital of the world. I think it was only Metropolitan Police that responded, though, and then Howard Police has their own force as well. So we go, like all the assistant chiefs show up, chief of police is there. And I remember being one of the first ones there. And my FTO was like, well, we got to go in. And we didn't hear any shots fired, but people were saying, yep, we heard some shots fired. So we go in, first building. I think there was 4 of us. We joined up as like a 4-man team, and we had to go in. It was like a big academic building. We went in, cleared every single room. And like in the back of my mind, like, this is crazy. Like, it's my first day. I mean, so we cleared the building, and they called ERT, which is like emergency response team. It's basically like DC SWAT. So then they come in and do like another sweep, and K9 does another sweep, and it turns out to be nothing found. But like still, like that adrenaline, you go in, you hear people say, yep, shots fired. Like you're expecting it to go down in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But nothing went down. I forget what the end result was. I think it was just like a bogus call or something, or some girl was like having a dispute with her boyfriend, or I don't know. It was domestic in nature, but there was never a shooting.
I mean, those calls have really obviously changed over the last decade, where now you get a call like that in a major city, and I'm sure, like you said, in your mind, you're thinking this could be totally legit. Like, there's a good chance this isn't a false alarm.
Right. Like it was very, very realistic. Like Howard University, I mean, the shootings are more and more prevalent, I guess, now in the United States.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like an oh shit moment where this is a real career.
Yeah. And when you're going through there, and I assume you guys are formed up in some kind of diamond, or you're doing your best at clearing awkward spaces as a group of 4, right?
Yeah, so there was 3 in the front. So I had rear security.
Oh, God, that's the worst.
Yeah, so it was my FTO and 2 other guys. They had the front and the sides. And, I mean, it was just like you have to revert back to, like, what they teach you in the academy. Like, we had, like, tons of active shooter training. Like, we have a big warehouse where all we do is drills and drills and drills.
The simulations?
And it goes to show you. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It just goes to show you, like, what you learn in the academy, like that's real stuff.
Yeah, that and that they always say that you revert to your training, and so people know the rear guard position, because I suffered through that many a simunition scenario, is really tough. You're responsible for the safety of the whole group in front of you, and you're walking backwards with your gun out. So you're either holding onto somebody's belt, or you're trying to keep track of what the group's doing at the same time, making sure their 6 is safe. It's exhausting. I bet after that call you were exhausted.
Right. Like my right arm, like my weapon hand, my strong hand was like shaking.
Yeah.
Just from like pure adrenaline and having it like be held up for so long. Like, yeah.
It kind of gives
a real moment.
It gives a new, a different perspective on people who are like, well, I think you should shoot them in the arm. Oh,
yeah,
really?
Why didn't you shoot them in the foot? And then they can't run.
With adrenaline coursing through your veins. You're like, you should be like Annie Oakley and shoot him in the leg. That's a freaky experience. Absolutely. Caroline, can you tell us about a humorous call or something funny that you responded to in your 6 months so far?
All right, something funny. So this wasn't like a call that I responded to, but it kind of happened because I got a call. So I got a call at a McDonald's, like a normal disorderly call. And I go outside and there's this dog tied to a post, cute little pit bull. And it's like about to like break away from its leash. And so it's very, very sweet, but just like a little scared. So we're trying to get it to like not break out of its leash and run off. So we call animal control. But in the meantime, we go in and buy it like a dozen nuggets, like McDonald's nuggets. And so that's how we kind of made friends with the dog, just feeding it chicken nuggets.
That's how you make friends with me. So
I mean,
Makes sense.
Everyone else was like, "Can I have some nuggets? Like, I'm hungry too."
The homeless people were like,
"This is exactly." They're like, "Hey,
hey,
that's my dog."
I'm a person, so give me some nuggets.
Right. So, animal control ended up coming in and taking the dog, but we all nicknamed him Nugget. So
Nice.
there was like a full line of people waiting to adopt Nugget, but he had gotten claimed, so no Nugget for him. But every time, like, we still see him, like, walking with his owner or whatever, the person that adopted him. And we're like, "Hey, Nugget, how are you? Want some chicken nuggets?" So,
does he remember you?
Absolutely not, no.
Oh, okay.
Only the chicken nuggets.
Gotcha. Caroline, can you tell us about the most intense call you've experienced thus far in your police career?
The most intense call? So this was right after I got out of training. So I'm by myself. We call it 99. I'm riding around 99. And Washington, D.C. has gunshot detectors. They're called Shot Spotter.
Are those accurate? Do those work out for you, or are they cause problems?
They do more better than harm. Sometimes they're not totally accurate on location, but then other times they are spot on.
Okay.
So overall, they're pretty good. So someone is down at like communications, like where the dispatcher is, and their job is just to like watch Shot Spotter and to alert us when they get something. So I remember driving around, I'm just coming off a call, and I hear on the radio like, "Shot Spotter, we have, I think it was 6 rounds detected in 700 block of Fairmont." So I'm like, "Oh, that's my PSA. Let me go to that. I'm going to be dispatched anyway." So I go there. Units are flying in, and then there's these 2 gunshot victims in the middle of the street.
Whoa.
So, right. So we are issued, they're basically like first aid kits. They're called TET kits. And so I grab mine. People start roping off the block with crime scene tape. And this one guy is shot like blank in the chest. And then this other lady is shot in the back and her thigh. So we immediately start doing like first aid. We start getting them bandaged up, stuff like that.
And is there blood? Is it like that bright red blood everywhere? Yeah,
like the kind of like red that is only like blood, like the deepest red you will ever see.
Yeah.
And so I started doing first aid on them, and then my partners had to go and clear an alley. We collected all these shell casings and stuff like that. And then, so they get them off to the hospital, and then we find the gun. Well, not the gun, but this guy, one of the victims, had a gun in his backpack. So we think it was probably like a robbery gone bad kind of thing. Like this guy tried to rob another guy with his BB gun, and the other guy had a real gun.
Ooh.
Yeah, just robbery gone bad, we think.
Bad
but that
move.
was like the first time that I was like, "Oh, this is me. Like, this is in the movies. Like, this is mine."
Yeah. Isn't it crazy, those moments with like gore and stuff? It's like it's not real. It's like wow, this is bizarre.
Right.
Responding to that, your first 6 months of job is nuts. Thank you for sharing that. That's crazy. I got to ask you, since you're on the job now, how does the way the media report on police right now, the media's always been sensational. They're always looking to sell papers or get clicks or whatever. But a lot of times it's at the expense of the police. How is that affecting you on the street? How are people treating you poorly because of the things they're interpreting? They're not really researching these reports by the media, and they're just are they just making judgment calls on you? Are you dealing with that on a daily basis?
Yes. So the people on the street, they generally hate us. So it's interesting. Like my district, it's about like half public housing, half very wealthy people. So the very wealthy people, like, they call us for little things, and that's cool. Like, we'll come check out your house if there's an alarm going on. We have no problem doing that. And they're typically pretty friendly. They're very appreciative. But then you go into some of these public housing areas where you don't get a lot of calls per se. It's a lot of like self-initiated.
Okay.
Because no one in there is going to call the police.
They're not wanting to invite you in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
So it's a lot of self-initiated thing. So that's like all they see is us coming in, taking their boy away, locking him up, So,
Do you have any?
I
Do
mean,
you have any nicknames that they like to call you?
I typically get called the white bitch.
Oh my! You must laugh when people say that to you. It's like, okay.
It's like, it's hard not to laugh. It's like, hey, and I love calling them out by name because I know all of them. And they're like, hey, white bitch. And I'm like, oh, hey, Joe Schmo. Like,
Oh no.
how are you today? And they hate that.
Yeah,
So
kill
they're
them.
like,
Kill them
oh,
with kindness.
okay.
Only way.
Exactly. But yeah, we pull in and they're like, fuck the 12, stuff like that. They've like gotten in my face a couple times, just like recording, being like, oh, you always come in here, you sit here, you're stalking me, I'm going to make a complaint. I'm like, all right, like, we have body cameras. You have the right to complain all you want. I'm just patrolling,
Right.
you know? Like, yeah, they hate us.
Yeah.
And
okay.
then when we go to lock one person up, like the whole block comes out. They're getting all of our faces, and
phones are out recording.
Phones
sure.
are out. I've made World Star Hip Hop so many times.
You're a star.
I'm a star. I'm a celebrity out here.
Wow, that is interesting. I have to ask you, since you've had a like everybody does, a long journey to getting free of training and being on your own in the car and really going to police calls. Is it how you thought it would be?
Yes and no. I feel like being in DC is an interesting city.
Absolutely.
It's pretty liberal. So we're not going to be like, I hate to say it, like those hard hitters, like I'm sure there are in LA. Like we can't go out and like serve like all these crazy search warrants. Like as officers, like we have like specialized units that do that.
Yeah, they're pretty, I mean, they're pretty hard on the PD here as well. They're a very liberal city. But DC is, I mean, it's like no other city in the country because you don't even have a state. You're the capital of the nation. So
Right.
that's kind of a weird thing in and of itself. So when you're charging people, like the DC cases I've seen is like so-and-so versus the U.S. It's not even
right.
It's really
everything's superior court.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting.
But it's also interesting. So we lock someone up, and it can be for like a gun charge. They're out the next day. They just get a court date. And that's like the frustrating part. Like you lock someone up for like something big and you see them the next day and it's like you do a double take. Like, did you escape? No. You just got released.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Federal law is weird like that. We had the national park where I used to work, in Eastham, and those rangers would get like an OUI or they'd get a car from the city visiting with a bunch of drugs, and they would arrest them and book them at our station. And it doesn't matter what the charge was, they would walk out the front door a couple hours later.
Exactly.
There was no holding them for court. And they actually, to show you how strange it was, do you know where they held federal hearings on Cape Cod? It was like in this weird old dusty room of the Hyannis post office. So the federal magistrates would come there and slap on their powdered wigs and take care of business. So I always thought that was so weird because you think the federal government, you think just all-encompassing power. They're not, they're an OUI against a federal charge for that, you'd be in jail for 10 years.
Right.
But
like it's
very
not
different.
what you would think like at all. So like we have like certain kinds of like offenses where like as soon as like the officer processes the arrest, you're held like at our station and then you get to go. You get your property back and you leave. But then like the felonies and stuff and domestic violence, like you're held and you have to go like downtown to the it's called Central Cell Block, which is underneath Superior Court. So they go down there and then they see a judge in the morning, and depending on their history, they're either held or released. And most of the time they're released. Like it's so crazy. Like you'll be so certain like, oh, I know this guy has all these pending charges. He's definitely going to be locked up. And you see him the next day. It's wild. I've had like a ton of arrests, some big felony arrests, and I've only had to go to one detention hearing, which is you basically tell the judge what happened, then the judge decides if they're held longer or released. And this guy was released. Like, this is a bad dude. Like, I locked him up for, it's so screwed up. He said he was going to kill his baby mama and her new boyfriend, kidnap their child in common, and then leave her other child in the house with their dead bodies.
Oh.
So, yeah, he's a nice guy.
Sounds good, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I locked him up for felony threats, among other things, that day. And he was held for like a week. I went and testified, and the judge is like, yeah, all right, we'll just let him go on GPS. I'm like, okay, waste of time.
Yeah, sadly, that is the case in a lot of the states right now. And Matt, in Yarmouth, there's just an officer killed during a search of a house. A K-9 officer, Sean Gannon, was killed by a guy that he actually had testified in court against the year before for several felonies, and the guy was out walking the street, and ended up ultimately killing him. Which it's a terrible thing, but it's created some real ripples in Massachusetts, and a lot of even the state reps and senators and stuff are talking about getting a little stricter. So, yeah, that's a tough thing to deal with, and I guess all you can do really is just like you're just going to do your job, and whatever happens on the other end.
Right, and it shouldn't have to take like an officer literally getting murdered in cold blood for legislators to, maybe we should be stricter on. Like, it's happening everywhere.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it
shouldn't come to that.
We had a case, our court, Orleans District Court, had a case a couple years ago where this guy was repeatedly threatening to kill a local police officer. For some reason, this police officer transported him to the House of Correction and wasn't an arresting officer, didn't have much interaction, but it got into this guy's head that it was this guy's fault. He started writing him those dropping letters off in his mailbox. I'm going to kill your whole family. To the point where he had to install security systems. The local PD had to have officers patrolling. It was really insane, and they kept letting the guy go. But listen to this. They get the guy in court for the final time, and he charges the judge's bench and tells the judge he's going to kill him.
Oh, my God.
Do you think he went to jail? Yeah. He went to jail immediately because he threatened the judge. So that's
what it takes.
Yeah, that was a little bit like, come on, this cop's been tortured for the last 8 months. His wife almost left him, and say the wrong thing to a judge, and now you're locked away. So those are the frustrations. What can you say, right?
Right. Gotta go on.
Caroline, I have to ask you, do you have any advice for young women looking to join the police department? Because that's one of the reasons, besides you being great, I wanted to have you on the podcast, was because there isn't a lot of females in law enforcement. There just isn't. I mean, there's more than there was 30 years ago, but still there's not many. Like when I started compiling a list of people to interview, the dudes stacked right up. I could find people, but there's just not that many women doing the job. So we definitely want to encourage any women who are interested to get into it. And is there any advice you would give someone who's listening right now and is nervous about doing it, nervous about the police academy, has some concerns?
The only advice I would have is definitely make some friends with females. Like my best friend, I met her in the police academy. She came to the same district as me. We're still very, very close. You have to go out. Like you have to just go out, forget about police work for a little bit. But you also have to have friends that like you work with that you can go out with, just because like you see some crazy things.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you just like need to vent and then just not talk about work at all.
Sure.
And I feel like, I don't know, like you gotta have someone that you can relate to on the job, and sometimes it's so hard to relate to the guys.
Of course. I mean,
you can't relate to them, they can't relate to you.
The reality is police jobs it's a boys club. It's mostly men. So it's a challenge you guys have to face.
Right. And of course, with it being a boys club comes other issues. And I feel like it's so easy for female police officers to be intimidated by their coworkers. A lot of times, like, the guys, like, always have it in the back of their minds, like, oh, you can't be as tough, you can't be as physical, like, hands-on as men. But it's so not true. Yeah, sometimes you can't run as fast or lift as much as them. What females have is, like, the verbal judo that I feel like sometimes men lack.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Oh, totally. Like, we can be sympathetic. Like, you go into a domestic situation, right away, I'll take the female. Hey, girl, I got you. What happened? Come talk to me.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I saw that. I worked with two females at, I keep calling them females, two women at where I worked. And that exact thing happened over and over, where a situation can be defused verbally or with the wrong attitude can become a real problem or a fight. And women have an intuition that really is useful there. Absolutely.
Right. And I feel like, so guys, like, they can be as tough as they want, but they're never going to be able to talk to a female and de-escalate her like a female can.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. Like, sometimes they can, like, sweet talk her, but, like, they're never going to have, like, that, like, mutual, like, instinctual connection. So I feel like some advice I would have, like, no matter how discouraged, like, your coworkers can get you, always, like, have it in the back of your mind. Like, you have that intellectual, like, the verbal judo that some men can lack.
That's awesome. I love that, verbal judo, and it's very true. And when it comes down to the physicalities of police work, women, maybe you just go to your tools quicker. You know, you don't have the strength in a certain situation, you go to a use of force faster, and that's totally acceptable by the courts.
It's totally justified. Like,
yeah.
I was always taught in the academy, like, when we're going through, like, defensive tactics, like, we would do it, like, practice, like, on each other. And I would always be like I'm pretty little. I would always be, like, paired up with a classmate who by default was probably twice my size. And I always remember my instructors being like, if you're ever in this situation where he's on top of you, you're not even going to use your hands. Like, it's totally justified to pull something off your belt and go for it. Like,
Absolutely.
Where a guy, he could put up, like, a little bit of a fight first, but it would totally be justified.
Absolutely. As long as it's reasonable, you know, absolutely. So that's, you can level the playing field right there. Caroline, thank you so much for coming on. You were really fun to interview. It is so great to get a woman's perspective on police work. It sounds like you're kicking ass out there in Washington, D.C., so I'm really happy to hear that, and I really appreciate you setting aside the time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Guys, thank you for checking out the podcast. If you've been enjoying the podcast and you want to show some support, it would be really awesome if you subscribed, rated, and reviewed in iTunes. That really helps the show out, and I appreciate it. If you want to reach the show, or if you would like to be a guest, if you're a law enforcement officer, active or retired, that has some stories you'd like to share, go ahead and email me at thingspolicesee@gmail.com. That's thingspolicesee@gmail.com, and that's also in the show notes. So once again, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time.